Hi everyone, welcome to the Dual Language PLC 2014-2015 guide to using our visiting tool. We're excited to start another school year in which we are collaborating to be able to provide effective feedback to teachers. Last year we provided over 200 pieces of feedback on specific high leverage research-based practices for dual language. And providing feedback is so critical to our teachers whose practice for language acquisition and literacy are highly specialized. Descriptive feedback tells us what's being observed in the classroom, but specific and effective feedback goes beyond the descriptive and informs us and allows us to identify and assess the development of those practices we know to be effective with our learners. Since we are the team with the greatest ability to provide effective feedback, ensuring that we have meaningful opportunities to learn about the learning and instruction in our dual language classrooms is critical. The purpose of the dual language classroom visits is to identify the high leverage research-based instructional practices for language acquisition and literacy, to develop those practices in teachers by providing specific and effective feedback, to collect data to inform professional learning opportunities, and to collaborate as a team to support a professional growth in evaluating effective instruction. This year, we're going to move away from the walkthrough or quick glance at instruction, and instead we're going to focus on longer periods of time that will provide us with the greatest opportunity to really learn from our teachers and students. Our focus is on developing your skill level, maximizing your leadership at your site, and finally to bring research into action. The PLC dates that we'll be meeting formally will be at Banting on September 25th, November 6th at Blair, January 29th at Bethesda, March 19th at Higher, and May 28th at a middle school site that we have not yet determined. We will be meeting at 9 a.m. promptly and only need a meeting space to be designated by our hosting school for before and after our site visits. On the months that we're not getting together as an official PLC, the hope is that you all will be collaborating ECs with other ECs or ECs with administrators with other sites to go and look deeply into these classrooms and use the expertise that all of you have to, in October, December, February, and April, gather 10 data samples per individual or per pair on the instruction that you're seeing in the classrooms and, most importantly, the learning you're seeing in the classrooms. At each designated PLC date, principals and ECs should engage a teaching staff member to attend and participate in this process. Our teachers are our best leaders of practice in this area, and we want to provide them with opportunities to demonstrate leadership, learn from colleagues, and support our learning above all. Please use your billing substitute if they're available to cover the time the teacher will need to actively participate. Planning ahead might mean a different teacher participates each time, or that you select someone to participate over time, but that's up to you. The message is that we are partners, although we have different roles in making our program great. Evidence of student thinking is a major endeavor for our district. However, for language learners, it's often obscured by their language acquisition. This tool will help to demystify some of the practices that will allow our students to demonstrate the evidence of their thinking. So here's the tool. You'll notice that through the form there are several fields that are required, and those will be marked with a red star. We've encountered some times in the past that we've been unable to answer a few of the questions, and so we've included an other box in most of the questions. Please choose that option when it's appropriate. We'll start by gathering data on the school site and then the time that the visit begins, and we'll plan to spend about 10 minutes per visit. The first thing we want to do is maximize learning in the classroom, and so it's important to see how adults are deployed and what the strengths and areas for growth might be. The engagement of the adults is very important as we all share responsibility for student achievement. As always, other can be marked if it's needed. In the cases of co-teaching, please mark the activity of the lead teacher or the predominant practice of both teachers as it is appropriate. Another teacher should never be marked or coded as an aide because we really want to look at how our aides are deployed in our classrooms and the kinds of things that they are doing or yet not doing that might need some professional support as we go forward. Fidelity to the language allocation plan. The language allocation plan is really key and critical to our program's success and its outcomes. Please take time to describe how the teacher has prepared for and used academic language and complex speech. Take notes on this to provide evidence for your selection on the right. The language of instruction is consistent with language allocation plan, refers to the teacher planning and the teacher's decisive use of the target language. So the answer is yes, they are either in only English or only Spanish. No, they use both languages. And the third one is that they're bridging and using contrastive analysis in which both languages is appropriate. Oracy for literacy. As you know, student language development is critical for biliteracy development. Observing how students use language and taking some notes as evidence will help you to make a selection on the right. When coding student language use, we are looking to distinguish between random productions of academic language and supported production of academic language. As we all know, we really do need to push the rigor and the complexity of language to levels students are not likely to produce independently without our support. For that reason, we're asking you to look very carefully at language production, but also at the supports that are either in place or not yet in place to move students to higher linguistic complexity levels of production. The research is very, very persuasive that oral language development and the practices associated with it are high leverage literacy practices in supporting students in their ability to provide evidence of their thinking. Oracy dialogue instructional practices. We are looking for 100% or total participation so that students can provide evidence of their thinking. As we know, if kids can't say it, they can't write it. For language acquisition and literacy, dual language students themselves must be the speakers. They must be engaged with each other for authentic purposes. In this item, we want to look at how students have been set up for total participation so that we can support specific oracy dialogue strategy development. Some of the strategies you might see facilitated by the teacher and the students use is TPR, or total physical response. We might see think, frame, pair, share, shoulder partners, pairs or groups of students working on one product, parallel lines, the fishbowl, partner A, partner B roles. Hand raising and teacher selection is still part of our instruction, as you may see here. Shout outs by eager students, conversation and open dialogue, strategic bilingual pairs and language partnering, and students are engaged in a non-oral activity like silent reading. There's also another box here for other in which you can mark if there's something else happening. The learning focus. In this item, we're hoping to gather data on the type of content that may be presented in class. We may be able to see over time that in math class, there's high language allocation plan fidelity, coupled with high oracy support, and high implementation of think, frame, pair, share. This would be a strength in our program that we would want to maximize. Student engagement with learning. It's less important that we see the I can statement than it is that students know what they are learning and the criteria for good work. As we move towards personalization of learning for each student, it is critical that our students be very clear about what they are doing and the indicators that would tell them that they have done the work well or indicators that would help them to improve their work. Students who know what they're learning and the qualities of good work are more likely to be able to provide clear evidence of their thinking. One of our team members will ask a student, "What are you learning?" And the student may respond with an answer that's connected to a specific skill or strategy, or the student may respond with an indicator that is not connected with the specific skill and strategy. The second question will be asked, "And how do you know your work is good?" or "How do you know you're doing a good job?" Students indicate the criteria for proficient work. Students may indicate reliance on the teacher to tell them whether they've done good work, or the student might say, "I don't know." There's also an other box. We never know how students will respond. Depth of knowledge. We want to collect data on the amount of students who are actively engaged in learning. An indicator, once we are clear on this, it will be easier for us to determine the depth of knowledge in our classrooms. We're going to ask ourselves how many students appear to be engaged in demonstrating application of the learning objective. So they're not listening or waiting for instructions. They're actually engaged in whatever the activity or learning happens to be. We're looking for all or most of all, a majority, about half, few, or the objective isn't communicated, or the objective is communicated but students are doing something else, and then there's always other. Then we'll go and code those as recall, remember type, skills or learning, skill and concept development or application, strategic thinking and analysis, or extended thinking in which students are applying their learning to new contexts. The type of engagement can increase the amount of students that are engaged and the amount of academic language they are producing, and so they make a big impact on students' ability to demonstrate evidence of their thinking. We're hoping to develop practices that encourage bilingual pairings, that students do the heavy lifting with support for their language development from their peers. So we're asking in this question, of the largest student group, how are those students engaged? Sometimes we see students working independently, even while sitting together. Sometimes we see students working in pairs or groups on one product, like the girls in the photo here. I imagine there's a lot of academic language going on between these two. Sometimes we see whole class listening and responding activities. Classroom environmental print is a key resource for language acquisition and is the greatest support for students to be able to demonstrate evidence of their thinking and writing. We think deeply about removing barriers for students so they can demonstrate their thinking even while their languages are developing with independence, support, and efficacy. The research is very, very clear that previous thoughts about students naturally bridging their languages, in fact, does not occur. We must explicitly support them to do this so that they can access all of their linguistic resources. You'll be taking notes on the left about the things that you see in the classroom that support metalinguistic awareness and analysis. And then on the right, we'll be coding black for Spanish, blue for English, sentence frames and accessible vocabulary, side-by-side and contrastive analysis, formal and informal and regional dialects, evidence of students' bilingual work in both English and Spanish, and our famous letras tramposas, which you can see a sample of on the left, where the B and the V are being compared for the way that they're used in words. Both of those letters have the same sound and are often confusing for developing bilinguals. There's also an other box. We never know what we could see. How long did you spend? Sometimes you spend less than 5 minutes and gather this data. Sometimes you spend more than 10 minutes. Your learning is the most important goal of using this tool because when you know, you can help others to grow through your feedback. Creating feedback. The form emailer has been giving us some problems, so we're not able to use it at this time. You'll have an option of clicking Provide Feedback in an email or Provide Feedback on a card. What you can do is you can leave your form open and you can copy and paste it into an email and send it to the teacher. Or if you choose, you can synthesize your data and craft feedback to the teacher using the Spiffy. We always want to celebrate growth and practice, as well as ask a reflective question for future action. The Spiffy was created for dual language teachers to support effective feedback on their practices and is aligned to Danielson's Domain 2 and 3. We hope that feedback to our teachers can indeed change the world for our students and the community. Some resources that you might need before we go into our walkthrough could be the Dual Language Classroom Visit Form 2014-15, the Dual Language Year at a Glance, and the specific positive individualized feedback for you, or just write Spiffy into your search bar in your Google Docs. The resources here are always available to you, and we can't wait to see you at Banting Elementary School September 25th at 9 a.m. Please plan to invite a teacher leader from your site, and we will start promptly at 9. Thank you.